This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Before time itself was measured, the Word was speaking. The Word was and is God. The Word remained ever present with the Creator. His speech shaped the entire universe. Immersed in the practice of creating, all things that exist were birthed in Him. His breath filled all things with a living, breathing light. A light that thrives in the depths of darkness. A light that cannot and will not be quenched. The Word took on flesh and became human and chose to live alongside us. We have seen Him enveloped in undeniable splendor, the one true Son of the Father, Jesus, the light of the world, evidenced in the perfect balance of grace and truth. You know, these days, light is pretty easy to access. Well, for most of us. As a matter of fact, right now at my home, the whole back corner of my house has no light. And that is due to this crazy, weird, Jetsons-like plug-in nightlight apparatus that was put in my home about 50 years ago. I learned quickly this past week that to plug a vacuum cleaner into that plug is not a good idea. I now have no light in the back of my house and a bigger issue to deal with. But definitely light is something that sometimes maybe we take for granted. I know that most of you, typically those of you who walk into your home, you can go right in the doorway and reach in to a switch and access light immediately. You know, we have flashlights, we have candles, we have matches, we have the light that illuminates from technology screens. So we have light and it's pretty easily accessible. We rarely even consider being cut off from light totally. But the reality is that our world really has darkness pressing in all around it. And even if you think over just this past year, we can see easy examples of that. I think of the people in East Tennessee who just a few weeks ago experienced horrific wildfires that claimed over 16,000 acres of national park land and land in the Gatlinburg area. Over 1,600 structures, homes, cabins, businesses, churches were burnt to the ground, leaving people with nothing. Certainly tragic. I grew up about an hour from there, and that hits really close to home. I think back in July in France, where the evil nature of this man who drove a truck into a crowd of people at a festival. I think about just the civil war, the unrest, the escalating hopelessness in Syria, and just the tragedy that those people are experiencing. I think about the people of North Korea who live in a country that's such rigidity where they don't even really have knowledge of what is going on outside of their country. They have no freedom living under communist rule. You're probably sitting there right now like, wait a minute, I came for a Christmas Eve message about joy and hope and some feel-good stuff here. Yeah, I know, but you see, the reality is that when Jesus came, he was coming in a world that was filled with darkness. You know, when we think about the world at that time, it was really full of violence. Oppression was everywhere over the poor and the weak. The world, the Roman Empire seemed all-powerful, and God seemed very silent at that time. I think about just the nativity scene itself. Mary and Joseph found themselves homeless refugees forced by the government to comply with the census. They had no place to stay. They had no family around them. And they probably definitely felt like darkness was enfolding on them. I think about this stable or this house where Jesus was born, probably very dirty and not what we would think would be fit for a child to be born. I think about just the manger itself, or this feeding trough filled with straw. Or what about the animals there? I mean, I think that possibly there were cows there, and I'm not thinking they were the cute, cuddly, flower-scented type, but they were probably more the ones that were making the place smell bad and probably causing a racket. And I think about the shepherds, these guys that were probably rough men that smelled of sheep, that were not fit really to worship with any regular people. You see, none of that mattered. The light of the world had come. And so all of those things, the roughness, the homelessness, the hopelessness, the despair, the fear, all of that faded away. So tonight, as we acknowledge just the difficulty, the anxiety, the despair of darkness, we do that so that we can fully understand the peace, the security, the hope of the light. The light had overcome the darkness. And I imagine that tonight, probably this afternoon, a lot of you have come into this place and you're probably feeling some of the weight of that darkness. There's the darkness that is enveloping you and threatening to take that last bit of light out of you. I want you to once again hear the words from John that I spoke just a few minutes ago. and this may be from a version that you're more familiar with. It says this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made. And in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I want you to say that, all of us in unison, that with me. And just repeat this after me. The light, the darkness. I hope that you believe that tonight, because that is the truth. I know that for some of you right now that you probably feel a heaviness. You feel that there's a dark time in your life in the midst of this Christmas season, on Christmas Eve, and it's supposed to be filled with joy, but there's something in your life of darkness that is pressing in. There's maybe some hurt. There's something that's holding back that last bit of hope that you have. You know, maybe some of you came here tonight just to hear your child sing or your grandchild sing, and that's okay. There may be some kids here that you came because you're participating in the service, or maybe even more, you came because your parents drug you here. There's probably some of you that came tonight that you don't really know why you're here. You got ready, you showered, you got dressed for church, and you came here, but you're not really sure why. You want to believe. You see, the first step to believing is embracing the light that dispels the darkness. And that light is Jesus, the light of the world. Isn't it interesting that in our world, all light, all sources of light will be extinguished? Flashlights, the batteries will die and the darkness will overcome it. A match, that stick will burn to the end and the darkness will overcome it. A candle, some wind may come, some water may come and extinguish that fire, and the darkness will overcome it. The illumination from all of our technology that gives us light, the internal components, they are gonna die, and then darkness is gonna overcome it. I even think about the sun, this natural example that even God put in place. Well, scientists tell us that eventually the hydrogen that it is burning is gonna burn out, and the light is gonna leave, and the darkness will overcome this universe. But really, the true light, Jesus, is the only light that endures, the only light that endures, and that will always overcome the darkness. So tonight, in this Christmas season, whatever maybe is going on in your own heart, maybe there's hurt, maybe there's something that is pressing in on you, and it seems like it is almost snuffing out that fire, that light. Know that the darkness does not win. It doesn't, because the light has come, and the darkness will not overcome that light. Father, thank you so much for your promise. The promise that we get to experience light and life in you because of your son, Jesus. God, we thank you that because of Jesus, that we can live and not be fearful, Lord, that we don't have to be anxious, that we don't have to worry about what the future holds, because you bring us hope, you bring us security, you bring us peace. God, may we rest in that, knowing that your light is eternal, that it will endure, and that it will always overcome the darkness that presses in. God, we give you thanks for Jesus. We give you thanks for light. For it's in his name that we pray. Amen.